Jamu, everyone. We're back. I took a couple days off. I had some things to deal with, but the history of the left-hand path, it continues. And we're going to ruffle some feathers tonight. We're not talking ye old history with this. We're not talking long forgotten names within this tradition. We're getting into modern day. Evola was a stop. We're going to jump about 20 years, and this is going to put us in the 1960s, and that means some feathers are going to be ruffled as we are going to talk about Anton Lavey. And I just want y'all to be aware, I have put the work in to be as impartial with this as I can and continue on in this chronology. So, most of you, if not all of you watching, are familiar with the name Anton Lavey. Anton Lavey founded the Church of Satan on April 30th, 1966, declaring it Year 1 Anno Satanas. Year 1, the year of Satan, essentially. Roughly. He takes this and he builds a very public, very media-savvy religion around what he posits is a very simple thesis. Satan is a symbol of the sovereign individual and not a literal being. The Satanist is his own God, talking again on those lines of self-deification, of that theme that we have been seeing ever since we started to see, especially with the Fraterni Saturnalis, especially with what Crowley warned against, kicking off with Evola's stuff, this idea of self-deification. Lavey does take a twist to it, and we're going to get into that. But in 1969, he codifies his program in the Satanic Bible. He structures the book in so that it is 4 parts. The Book of Satan, Lucifer, Belial, and Leviathan. And in this book, he sets out this ethic of indulgence and personal responsibility. And importantly, where all our previous writers on the left-hand path have talked of the left-hand path in magic being magic, Lavey steps back and reframes this as psychology. He splits it into 2 parts. Greater magic is this kind of cathartic psychodrama that's used to focus will, with lesser magic being applied persuasion and glamour in everyday life. And so he takes these back and he starts to hit something that we see quite a bit of around this time, where we're pulling magic into psychology, Jungian ideas and such, and taking magic from being less magic to more psychology. And Lavey plays very well into this. In his Church of Satan discourse, Lavey posits that Satan is the personification of the left-hand path. So he is an emblem of a deliberate adversarial stance that prizes individual sovereignty over self-surrender. So now, Arthur Avalon is rolling in his grave, where we talked about Bhakti, and we talked about Kalula, and we talked about Agori, and these ideas and these tantric systems being surrender to, breaking the ego to surrender to the goddess. That is all gone. Arthur Avalon's works are gone. This even disregards some of what Evola writes. And Lavey says, the left-hand path is emblemized by Satan, and it is an adversarial stance that goes against the grain, and it prizes that individual's sovereignty. He also says that this is symbolic. Believing in a literal devil is not Satanism to Lavey. So no belief in the devil, no belief in Lucifer, where we talked about the history of Lucifer. Lavey discards all of this in favor of this symbolic thing, which, whether he knew it or not, being a personal adversary against what stands in religion is literally the job of the actual Satan, of Hasatan, the adversary, the one on the divine council who acts in the adversarial way for people to grow. So Lavey, whether he believes it or not, or is aware of it, literally steps into this role while claiming there is no literal devil. What this does is it turns the left-hand path from being a practice to being a banner that people can claim. And he secularizes a lot of the mechanics that are within this. As part of this, he starts to mainstream it. He starts to mainstream the AIM, the Satanic Bible. It's printing well, it's selling well, spiking around every Halloween, coming back down, but staying at a good level and spiking up again. But he mainstreams this so that every adherent is their own highest authority. This is now available to anybody. Which, we've now covered the basic idea of what Lavey was doing. Now we're going to start to do the part that ruffles feathers, and we're going to start to talk about the not-so-great parts of this. Issues within Satanism and the Church of Satan from the beginning. Large parts of the opening section, the Book of Satan, were lifted quite often verbatim from a little-known, and without attribution, from a little-known publication by a man named Ragnar Redbeard, who wrote a kind of social Darwinist tract, Might is Right. Large chunks of the opening are taken from that. What's not taken from that is taken from Crowley without attribution, and taken from Ayn Rand, which that's its own thing. In the biographies and in the research and the writings of Lavey, Gabriel Andrade calls the plagiarism within this massive. It was not a small thing. Another big issue we see is that it, as we discussed with his view on Satan, it empties Satan of any metaphysics, and it purposefully leaves only theater for this. This is a huge occurrence that happens with what Lavey does, and it's part of what leads our next step, Michael Aquino and others, to break away in 1975. We're going to have to do this into a two-parter. We are hitting the 10-minute mark. When I come back, I'll be immediately right back. We'll talk a little bit more about the issues with the system, like we have been doing, and then we're going to get into some of the personal issues of Lavey, and they're not good. And if this is upsetting to people, if people can find things that, point otherwise, I'm welcome to hear it in the comments, but I have spent these last 3 days off TikTok doing my due diligence in this research. I'm going to end this video here, and we will be right back.